Welcome back, everyone. This is part 2 of my programming requirements for CS210. Apparently, the issue with my screen recording program has been resolved, so hopefully you're able to see this one here. So let's just recap what I do in the first part of the video in here. So all these here are going to be required. So I'm going to go over them in Visual Studio Code to help you get a little better understanding of what we're going to be talking about. And then I have some not required, but highly recommended in there. So that's good, just good programming standards in there. So let's go and look at the first part over here, which is the top of the program, which we already have demonstrated in here. All variables on a separate line and all variables declared. So let's go and copy and paste this here. And I'm going to put it in here. So we can go over it one on one. So we want to do all variables undeclared on a separate line, all variables initialized, and all variables commented with its purpose. So I totally understand that Zybooks allows you and C++ allows you to do items like this. So let's just go and we'll declare an integer with, say, 3 numbers. So we can do number 1, comma, number 2, comma, number 3. That presents a few problems. One is it's difficult to comment what these are. Say you're doing num and then sum and then average in here. And also you have to go back and initialize each one individually. A lot of people think that if you do this, it initializes them all to 0 in here, but that's not necessarily the case in here. Also have to remember that not all compilers initialize everything to 0 or the blank string, depending upon what it is. Never take anything for granted with a compiler. So in this class, I'm going to ask you to separate each one, to initialize each one, and to comment each one. So the easiest way to do it is just type in the data type, then hit the enter key, and see you have a comma there. Then you can hit the enter key again, and you can hit the enter key again. And notice how they all line up. So the first thing we want to do is initialize each one to 0. And that takes care of that. So then you're going to put in a comment for each one. Now these ones here, what does num1, num2, and num3 look for? We have no ideas. So here in this particular case, let's just say we're going to add 3 numbers together. So I'll put in here the numbers that will be added together. So that takes care of that. And so let's just make this program where we're going to take these 3 numbers, we're going to get them, and we're going to add them together. So, and we'll get the sum and we'll get the average in here. So we covered the first and couple things in here, and all variables need to be camel case. So let's talk about camel case. Put in all variables are camel case. So according to C++, you can have a letter, a number, or an underscore. You cannot start a variable with a number, but you can start it with an underscore. I'm going to ask that you don't start it with an underscore, and you use strict camel case, and you do not put any underscores at all in the code. Now, will I take off if you do the underscore in the code in the middle, be separating words? Probably not. I'm just going to ask that you don't do it so we have consistency. So again, let's just talk about the variables, and we'll just call the sum of numbers. And I'll call it sum of numbers. And then you would initialize it. Since it's an integer, you would initialize it to 0. If it was a float or a double, you would initialize it to 0.0. And then you would put comma, and you comment the purpose. So here are other alternatives that we could use. You could do sum of numbers, but not sum of numbers. The reason being that is not camel case. So we're putting in not camel case. This is camel case. I don't recommend doing it this way, although sometimes when you have a long variable, it's a little bit easier to understand how it looks like when you have the underscore there. So, but the underscore really should be for constants, and that's okay. So we'll just leave it at that for right now. I prefer you do it this way, but if you want to do it this way, that's fine. In there, it's just a matter of preference. What I do recommend though is whatever way you do in one variable, do it in them all. Then let's work with constants. Now, there's a big argument one way or the other where should you declare constants. In my opinion, all constants should be declared outside of main. The reason being, when you're going to use them in a function, such as you may be passing an array that you need to have the number of elements in the array, well, you want to make it available through all of the program. You cannot change a constant. So one of the things that you should not ever, ever, ever have are global variables unless you specifically have to do it that way and there's no other way around it. The reason being is it's too easy to change a variable in a function without realizing that you're doing it. So we're just going to declare a constant here. Let's just say that we use max numbers. Notice that everything is underscored, and then we're going to initialize it to 3. So now we have sum of numbers, we have this. Let's get the average. Now we cannot use a integer for average. We'll need to use a double. And we'll call it average. And we could have just called this sum, by the way, too. I just wanted to emphasize the importance of camel case. And we're going to initialize this to 0.0. Does the compiler care if it's initialized to 0? No, but you may get a warning saying possible loss of data depending upon the compiler that you're using. Don't worry about it. Just get in the habit of 0.0. You know right off the bat it's a float in here. So now when it comes to creating our variables and we're getting input. So let's put this in here. And these are kind of your inputs. So let's go and copy this. And it says each cin should have a separate prompt without an endl. So notice without an endl. So let's go and do cout what is first number. So what you want to do here is you want to put a question mark. Then you want to have a space and then the semicolon. So there's no going to the next line. Everything is just peachy keen. And we'll do cin number 1. Now we're going to do the same thing with an end line. And I'm just going to copy. And I want to show you the difference. So we'll do second number. And we'll do num2. So let's run the program. Hopefully it doesn't crash. And we will find out really quick. And enter the first number. See how easy it is to realize, okay, we have a space here. And everything's on the same line. And we'll put 10. Now the next one is what is second number. I guess I just did not put in the endl on that. So let's go back and do it. And that's one of the issues when you copy and paste. Let's try that again. And we'll put in 10 again. Okay, now this looks kind of strange, and it's very easy to do. Normally people will just, maybe they'll hit the enter key again. So you want to make sure that you're putting everything on the same line. It makes it so much easier. All right, let's go and do the third one now. And we'll get rid of this endl. And we'll do third number. and we'll do num3. So now when it comes to calculations, all calculations should, however, I don't require it, but let me copy this down in here, put a use and now, let me find where I want. Here we go. So put in parentheses for each calculation. It just makes it easier to read, plus it takes the chance of error and minimizes it. So we're going to do sum equals num1 plus num2 plus num3. And we probably should use the right variable. Let's try sum of numbers. And then we're going to do the average equals the sum divided by the number max numbers. Let's see what we used. Max numbers. Okay, let's try this again, and we'll, don't know why it didn't. There we go. Now we have a problem here. And again, we need to do sum of numbers. The problem is at this point in time, we're declaring sum of numbers as an integer, max numbers as an integer, and we're going to be dividing integer by an integer. We're going to get integer division. So if the sum is 10 and max numbers is 3, we're going to wind up the average is 3. So at this point in time, you need to static cast either your max numbers or your sum of numbers. Doesn't matter, either one. So we just do static cast and then the data type that you want, which will be double in the little angles in here. I'm going to go to school to learn how to spell. And then you need to put in parentheses the variable. It used to be where you just did this before they came out with static cast. You just do double like this and then sum. But the new standards ask that you use static cast in here. This will still work, but remember, as things get older and more progressive, often things get deprecated and they're no longer supported. And then once you do that, you can do cout the sum and cout the average, however way you want to do it. So we'll just run it real quick and we'll do cout average without any fancy information. So let's add 3 variables together, see what we get. We'll make them 10. So we'll do 5, 2, and 3. So we should get 10 and 3.3. And I guess I need an end line, so let's try that one more time. And one more time. And we have 2, 3, and 5. This should give us 10 and 3.33. Now we're not using iomanip to format in this variable right now, so not to worry about it. So let's see what we have in here. Put in a comment after each closing bracket. All right. It's not a requirement, but I recommend it, especially when you start doing nested loops. This is a closing brace for main, so I recommend putting what this is for. And so to do the same thing with a function, let's go and create a function. Then I highly, highly, highly recommend that you use function prototypes. One other thing I want to mention is the use of endl versus new line. So I could do this as well. and that's going to produce the same thing. However, the endl will clear the buffer. So it's always better to bite the bullet and just do the extra endl, the extra typing in here. Or you could, if you have a couple things that you're going to use the new line character, which is the escape sequence, then make sure that you follow it with an endl. So let's go and create something that's going to get the sum, a little function. I recommend that you use a function prototype, but you're not required to do it in this class. So your function prototypes go above main. I like to put them either before or after the constants, depending upon what we're doing. So let's go and we'll put it right here for now. And we're going to get the sum. And I'll call it calc sum. And what we're doing is we need to pass the integers. So we need to pass in 3 integers. And then I've got a semicolon. This is a function prototype. Notice a little squiggly line here. That means that we need to create the function definition. And if you use a function prototype, you can have Visual Studio create it for you. So we're going to do here, and we'll just do, let's just create a sum in here. And there's different ways that you can do this. So let's just do it the simplest way. And I'm just going to make this num1, num2, and num3. Now, a lot of people will just like to do this. Return num1 plus num2 plus num3. And that's okay for simple functions like this. I'm more of a reach sum equals and just do this. And return sum. That's my preferred way of doing it. On something simple, there's really no reason why you can't do that. I also don't recommend, except in certain circumstances, to initialize a variable with a function. In this particular case, it's okay. What I prefer that you do is this. And the reason being is it's okay to do it in this particular case, but a lot of times people will initialize something with calculate this, something like that. It's all right to do it either way in this particular case, or to just do return num1, num2. But this, when you return sum, it really gives you a little bit more understanding. So now we're going to comment out the closing brace with sum or calc sum. And then there's one other thing that's vitally important in here. So first of all, let's go and sum is, let's calculate the sum. And let's do the same thing in here. And we'll just create another variable called sum, just so that we have something different. So we have sum equals 0. And then let's call this function here sum equals calc sum. Then we need to pass number 1, number 2, and number 3. And we need to see out the sum. And we also need to do the sum of numbers. And we'll take care of this and see what happens. So we're going to do 2, 3, and 5 again. And notice that we have sum is 10 is there. So that brings me to 2 other important things. Number 1 is no 1 letter variables. Everything should be descriptive. We shouldn't be using num1 or n1, n2, and n3. They're not descriptive. And in the function, it's also not a good idea to do n1, N2, and N3. So you want to be careful. Don't use any one letter variable names in there. And let's see if there's anything else. And then the last thing is each function should have the purpose of this function, the purpose of this function, assuming I can spell, is to calculate and return the sum of the past numbers. So that's all for this right now. I will be making more videos to help you along. There will be videos every single week that should help you with your assignments. And please make sure that you let me know if you have any questions. Please remember, I strictly like to have good code. So you want to make sure that you follow these guidelines. And if there's anything that you're confused about, please let me know so that I can clarify it. So have a wonderful, wonderful day.